clerk's office or whatever and get the ballots and stuff, or have it mailed to you. But it wouldn't be much different than going to your polling place. But the problem is, as I've said, lies in that the American people are at fault for our government shutdown. More people need to speak out. And the people that are largely against the Affordable Care Act, in my opinion, aren't voting. They aren't participating. They're just throwing us bitch fit and not doing anything about it, other than saying, "Oh, I'm going to join the Tea Party. I want to do this, yada, 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 yada." Now, I'm not saying all the Tea Parties don't vote. So I know a handful of Tea Party supporters who do vote, who do express their opinion. And while I may not agree with their assessment, I applaud them for voicing their opinions and their beliefs, because that's part of what makes this country great, is that you can express your beliefs and shouldn't have to face jail time or something like that. Now, if your beliefs get too radical or hurt others, well, that's another matter. But more people need to participate in the civic process. And voting is the simplest, easiest thing you could do. Generally speaking, it only takes a few minutes of your time. Do a little bit of homework, go in and express your opinion, and get out. And if you don't get your way, advocate for change again in the next election. But we need to impeach Obama. Well, you better have some very strong evidence to say that he's violated the laws of the Constitution. Because you just can't use impeachment like you can throwing someone out of a church by excommunicating them just because you don't like them or like what they've done. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been a whole lot of presidents who would have made it through office. I don't think any of them would have. About every president I can think of would have been thrown out for some reason, even Abraham Lincoln. I mean, he wasn't a big fan of slavery, but I remember at one point reading in some history books saying that if he could retain slavery just to get the southern states to come back, he would have done that. But so more people need to participate in our civic process. And this is my way of participating, to encourage you to do so. You may not agree with my opinion, but I am just as much an American as you are. Okay? And if you don't like what I have to say, you're welcome to find another show. But this is my semi-autobiography. And I relate stories. That's just the way I am. I get it from my paternal grandfather. He loved to tell stories. And I admit a lot of times I rolled my eyes when I should have been writing stuff that he said. I should have been writing some of that stuff down, because a lot of it's forever lost. But so I'm recording a lot of this. Well, as I said, there's a possible breakthrough through a move called a discharge petition. And here's what needs to be done. It only needs 18 Republicans for it to work. 18 Republicans. 18 people. Basically, you just need the standard baseball team to make this thing work, to give you an idea. Seems impossible? Well, 21 Republicans have gone on the record saying that they are willing to support a clean budget. Now, this is their chance to back up their words with the action and end the shutdown for good. However, Tea Party extremists believe that the government shutdown, or Tea Party extremists shut down the government to force their right-wing agenda on the American people. Representative John Boehner says he is unwilling to bring a clean funding bill up for a vote, which he said numerous times on various talk shows yesterday, from what I understand. Fortunately, though, if 218 representatives sign the discharge petition, okay, get this, if 218 representatives stand up to John Boehner right now, it will cut Representative Boehner's legs out from under him. Okay, legislative legs from under him. With 200 Democrats on board, they only need 18 moderate Republicans to sign on and stand up to the extremism of their Tea Party colleagues. Okay? That's all it needs. That's one way we can get this government shutdown to end. Because I don't see the Obama administration making any concessions on this, and they shouldn't. Whether or not you support the Affordable Care Act, it is now the law of the land. So let's make this thing work. And if we don't like it, then let's send another bill through Congress, through the Senate, seeking its repeal. But as it stands right now, the Supreme Court has upheld this law, saying it is constitutional. Whether you agree with that or not, take that up with the Supreme Court. But what they say goes, whether you like it or not. And the Affordable Care Act is law of the land. It went through extensive legislative debate 3 and 4 years ago. And it was signed by the President and has been upheld in court. So it is the law. And you can't simply circumvent the law, any laws that you don't like, by doing these in-and-run rounds like shutting down the government. That is not what this country was founded upon. Has the United States always honored its contracts? Hell no. But it's time we start doing that. I think we've gotten better at it. Now, I'm talking about in the past, like making treaties with various Native American tribes, saying, we'll do this. You won't force your people off the land. Well, gradually, we start saying, well, we'll take this provision out, put this provision out. Oh, guess what? We're moving your people from Florida to Oklahoma. We're going to move them somewhere else to some desolate location because we don't want them in our way. We have manifest destiny on our side now. Okay? But this is one possible way, because I don't see the Republicans or the Democrats making concessions, and the Republicans, all they want is to do away with the Affordable Care Act. If they can't fund it, well, let's delay its implementation. Well, guess what? It was implemented long before October 1st. There were various provisions that went into effect even 2 years ago. So you can't just simply circumvent the process because you don't like the Affordable Care Act or you don't like the man who helped create it. So let's make this thing work. Well, the shutdown of the federal government and the extremism behind it is another example of America's surging inequality. Okay? And I have a greater understanding now of how the Civil War came about and the tension between the North and the South. Now, I'm not saying that all supporters of the Affordable Care Act are in the North and that the people against it are in the South, because there's a fair mix there. Okay? But I'm starting to have a greater grasp of the different philosophies at work in our country here. That you have, for the lack of better word, there are essentially two schools of thought here. Those for it, those against it, okay? There aren't very few that are in between that I have noticed, at least according to the national media. Well, when almost all the gains of economic growth go to a small group at the top, most Americans, working harder than ever just to keep what they have, become anxious and angry. And that's what you're seeing right now. Republicans are trying to destroy the Affordable Care Act at all costs, even to the point of breaking the law, or at least toying with it. Okay? That fear and anger is easily used by demagogues, bankrolled by a handful of millionaires and billionaires, to distract attention from what's really happening, and putting the blame instead on the low income, the poor, who are accused of being takers, which is accused of encouraging idleness. So things like the food stamp program, food stamp funding is being slashed. Red state governors, legislators refusing to expand Medicaid, and in the middle, see the Affordable Care Act as a giveaway to those who don't deserve it. That's what's happening here. Meanwhile, tax loopholes for the rich become steadily larger. It's happened all throughout history. Economic fear and anxiety are directed at scapegoats. Big example, and I hate to point this out, Germany, 1930s, 40s. Instead there, you had anyone who opposed Hitler was put away. It wasn't just Jews. It was some of his own people, some of his own family, I'm sure. You know, while a handful of super rich people pour money into big lies that entrench their privileged position, the savage inequality America is experiencing is actually pulling us apart. You know, and giving the purveyors of hate exactly what they want. So you got groups like Fox News saying the Affordable Care Act will destroy us. And then you got MSNBC on the other side saying maybe this will save us. We got to find a middle ground in there somewhere. Okay? Now, there's a lot of hype going on around about the Affordable Care. Now, I'm going to talk more about the things like food stamps being cut. Actually, I'll get to that right now while I'm thinking about it, because this is another segment. It's a little bit long. But this was in the state of Arizona, if I can find it. So far, it appears to be that Arizona is the only state to have cut off welfare checks during the federal government shutdown. This was according to the Arizona Republic on Friday in their Friday paper. Republican Governor Jan Brewer's administration announced last week that 5,700 families eligible for temporary assistance for needy families would not be receiving their checks, which average about $207 a month while the federal government shut down. 5,700 families. Think about that for a moment. 5,700 families. Most of the towns in this part of the state of northeast Missouri are well under that population. Some counties, barely have that many people. Now, federal officials have told state welfare directors that they could use alternate sources of funding during the shutdown to keep assistance programs funded, and they'll be reimbursed when the federal government reopens. But still, the state of Arizona has shut down welfare to 5,700 needy families. And I understand that there probably isn't much of an economic crunch as many other states across the country. But still, there's got to be a way to keep funding for those programs alive. And innocent people are getting hurt. And right now, I don't see how we're going to get out of this. But to cut off 5,700 families, that's a lot of people. My hometown, Fayette, Missouri, at last I knew, was just under 3,000 people. So this would affect everybody in my hometown, plus nearly double that amount. Okay? Well, getting back to the hype about the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, and as I stated last week, I don't like the term Obamacare because it is misleading, and I'll tell you why in just a little bit. Okay? My friend Maria, who is a registered nurse in the state of Ohio,